Okay, last last Q&A of the year. Yeah.
I definitely asked you this, definitely outside of the Q&A.
Yeah.
I may have asked you in the Q&A.
Okay.
I
Maybe there'll be a different answer.
But I know, I was speaking about this for Shabbos a couple weeks ago. About like the book Start With Why. It's like Simon Sinek, having like a mission.
Sounds familiar.
Right. So the challenge that I'm facing is, like we know, like in Judaism, like your wife should be learning Torah, because of like, I don't know, be perfected, olam haba. But the book, I think, Sean, you're very big into this also. So like, it's almost like you should have like it's saying you should have like a mission in life. So that you have purpose,
Mhm.
And it could be, it could be personal, it could be like helping other people,
Mhm.
and like it's also for like in a work setting environment,
Yeah.
right? So the question is like, how do you blend, or it could be separate, I don't know, like how do you blend like the Torah lifestyle with like your work? Meaning like the purpose of the mission is so that it can help you achieve your goals, so that it could fund your life,
Mhm.
yeah, right?
Right.
But in Judaism, it's like we don't value, like money so much. So the question is like, how do you?
But we do value funding.
We do value funding,
right. Yeah.
So how do you blend the two together? Or can it be two separate missions, or like?
Right.
Like, so I'm just wondering.
Okay, so I'm gonna try to answer the question. I think it might be a multifaceted question. So
maybe we say the question like I just
okay, fine. Yeah. I mean that. Well, one question I'm hearing is that there is a like universal mission, so to speak, by virtue of the fact that you are a human Jew, right? That you're a Tzalem Elokim who is part of the Torah system, right? And that's going to be the same for every Jew. But on the other hand, this book seems to be saying that there needs to be like an individualized mission.
Yeah.
So how do you formulate that?
Yeah, even each Jew has like
right.
Not the same people.
Right. So I mean, I think that is the answer, which is that like there is a tremendous amount of self-knowledge, both in terms of your strengths, your weaknesses, your potentials, and your circumstances. That you're the closest thing that there is to like a mission in your life is how to actualize your human potential given your personal qualities and circumstances, and it's going to be like a mirror. It's going to be, you can't be Rabbi Akiva, probably, right? I mean, we don't know, you're not 40 yet, so we can see, but like, so like, it is going to be, there's going to be like a dance between like, continually gaining understanding of what it means to be human and what it means to be a Jew, and then like adapting that to like your own personal strengths and weaknesses. And it's not going to remain constant throughout your life. I don't think so. Like, especially circumstances change, but also your self-knowledge will change and your goals might change. Your understanding of Torah might change. So I think like it should be a mix between the two, but also continual reevaluation should be the name of the game there. That's why I mentioned, let's say like when I read my my educational mission statement, I do try to read it once a year to see to what extent am I fulfilling it, and to what extent am I have I like changed my goals, and should I change my goals?
Yeah, I guess another question is like, I mean, turns out that like your education and what you do as Rebbe is like kind of like there are a lot of overlap, right?
Right.
But I guess another part of the question is like because like having like a mission in life, like it affects your decision making process, right? So like because I have a job, and I'm in yeshiva learning, so like my decision making process can be, I don't know, separate in those two categories. So like, is there universal?
So I think the key, which you also alluded to in the way you formulated the question, is like you need to keep clear what is a means and what is an end. Not just like on paper, but like how you're actually relating to it. Let's say like the classic mistake is a person comes from yeshiva and says like, oh, I'm going to be making enough money to be able to like live a life of learning. And then like years later, they wake up and realize like, oh, I just haven't been learning for the last couple of years. So like, am I relating to my job as a means for a life of learning, or or has the job become the end? So like keeping straight what does it mean and what is an end is clear. It needs to be kept clear. That's another guideline. And yeah, I think those are the guidelines. I mean, basically, yeah. Okay, next question. Yeah, Isaac. Oh, sorry. Wow.
Yeah,
that was a big hand. I'm not used to seeing it with. I'm on a different view here. So yeah.
Okay. So related but different question.
Yeah.
Is working while learning a lechatchila or a bedieved?
Is working while learning
like,
that's a good question. I mean, there's that Mishnah in Avos. Do you know what I'm talking about?
There's a few different Mishnahs and Avos. There's like Ahavas Malacha. There's
Right.
Torah Im Arts Shigeshem Mishkachas but then like there's a few statements. Yeah. So that's there's 110 I think.
Okay, let's see.
Shammai.
Did I spell it wrong? No, I didn't. 110. Yeah, Shemaya Omer Ehoves Malacha Usnas Rabbanus Altis Badal Rashus. Love work, hate Rabbanus. I think plain shot is like positions of being in positions of like where you're a master. I don't think it means like the rabbinate, because the rabbinate didn't exist. I mean, it might then when it comes to, and then Altis Badal Rashus, and don't make yourself known to the government. And then the other one is Yafet Torah Im Derech Eretz.
Perik base.
Okay, thanks.
Siblings thing we got around in the family now.
Yep. Okay. Rabban Gamliel beno shel Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi Omer Yafet Talmud Torah Im Derech Eretz Sheyagias Shneim Meshakachas Avon. So Torah, beautiful. How beautiful is Talmud Torah with Derech Eretz? Derech Eretz here, presumably meaning like making a livelihood, because the exertion in both of them causes sin to be forgotten. That seems to be like avoiding a negative. Yeah. Sorry. Go on with your question. I just want to like actually quote the sources that you were referencing.
Yeah. Oh, the second part of this Mishnah is also like the next clause is also relevant.
V'chol Torah she'ein imach malacha, any Torah that doesn't have work with it, sofa b'tela v'goreres avon, then in the end it will be become null and will drag sin with it. Okay, yeah, that's right. So in other words, that's also so that would seem to, it's fine. It's a lechatchila bedieved, right? Just, I mean, we haven't learned those Mishnayos, but I'm saying like from the way that Mishnah is saying it, it's like a necessary evil, right? So it's lechatchila in the sense that you should, from the outset, strive to have malacha, but not because it's the best good. It's because without it, then you're going to subject yourself to like a harm, Yeah.
So I guess to what extent is it a lechatchila or a bedieved? That's my question,
Right. I mean, the other factor here is something that I think we discussed. I forgot this was in a regular discussion or a Q&A after the David Fader talk about work, right? And you were asking like, isn't there an idea of like creating like actual positive change in the world through, your non-Talmud Torah efforts?
There was that, and then there was also picking a job that is going to put you in a situation that helps you work on your Middos.
Right. Yeah. Correct. Yeah. Right. So
or utilizing your job as a
vehicle. Yeah. So definitely utilizing your job as a vehicle for working on your Middos is that I don't think is possible to disagree with. Like, I think that's definitely a thing. What was that? Right. You did it with any job.
Yeah, but certain jobs, I think we talked about, are gonna be more inclined towards self-development, and the people and the culture and the groups that you're part of within your working job can either help facilitate that or not.
Based on what Pesach said, I think that there are two things that help you perfect yourself. It's learning, learning pre-teshuvah and being in business.
And being what? In business?
And learning like Baba Kama, business stuff.
Yeah. So the way I'm thinking about it today, like, is that let me think about this for 1 second here. I mean, I feel like there should be a like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but in terms of like human perfection, So like at the ground level, then you do need the primary function that your job, that you need your job to do is to meet your needs and the needs of your family in a way that does allow you to be involved in learning, right? That is the ground level, right? If you have the ability to do so, to have a job where you can utilize it for getting other perfections, like perfecting your middos and stuff, then that is a greater thing. And if you could get the job that is that can also help the world, then that's an even higher thing. And the reason why I'm saying it's in that order is I do believe, and you can argue with this, I do believe that Judaism's model of perfection is a trickle down type of thing where your primary efforts should be in perfecting yourself. And then perfected, to the extent that a person is perfected, they will naturally be able to contribute more to the world and be driven to contribute more to the world in terms of their other stuff. And if you try it the other way around, if you try to make the lechatchila the other way around, where I'm going to sacrifice my own development for the tzibor, so then statistically you're not going to end up developing, and you're also, that's going to harm your ability to contribute to the tzibor. Now I understand that there are certain crossroads in a person's life where they have to make decisions about, let's say I'm going to work for 10 years to make a living and compromise my own perfection so that I could retire early. And there are things like that, or let's say a real need in the community that no one's going to fulfill this need. And so there are other considerations, but I think as the standard hierarchy, then I think the model is physical needs to be able to develop learning needs, and then middos needs. And again, there's a mix there also, but I'm saying in terms of the choosing the job, and then world needs. Yeah.
Where would you put a job that's going to give you bad middos?
Yeah, I mean,
Does that come before just that? It needs to be a place that's not going to harm your middos.
Yeah, I mean, if it were that simple,
what jobs are out there like that?
Lots, tons.
I'm asking. I don't know.
I mean, the example from the Gemara is that
The
if
tax collectors, right?
tax collector is a big one. Yeah, right.
Mechanics, I heard.
I've never heard of mechanics. No, but
Politicians.
yeah, politicians is a bad one. But the Gemara says a shochet, right? Is that if you're a shochet, then you're going to become desensitized to cruelty, and now obviously this exists with the reality that obviously we hold that there should be shochtim, right? But it's a cost, so same thing with, let's say, there are certain jobs that will. Achzarios is a bad midah.
Achzarios.
Cruelty. Achzarios. That is one of the classic bad midahs.
Slaughtering animals is cruelty.
Well, it desensitizes you to suffering. That's why we have the mitzvos of Tzar B'Alei Chaim. That's one of the reasons, is because the way you treat animals is going to affect the way you treat people.
I thought that if being a shochet, it channels your energy.
Right, that's another consideration. Is what if you're channeling it, But again, this is why you can't take any statement of Chazal and make that into the Iker, But I think the Gemara is the best of butchers is like a Malek, it compares the if you're a really really good hardworking butcher, you're gonna be very very achzar like a Malek. So going back to Sean's question about what if you're going to expose yourself to bad middos? I mean, it's a risky venture, I think these things have to be weighed with pros and cons, and maybe that's going to be an opportunity for you to exercise the good midah of avoiding developing bad middos. Yeah, I mean, it has to be taken into account. I don't know where it fits on the hierarchy, especially because the bad middos affect all three levels. They affect depending what the midah is, it affects the way you relate to your needs and the needs of the people around you. It affects your ability, how you interact with other human beings in terms of contributing to the world, and it affects your Talmud Torah. Yeah. I don't know if there's a rule.
There's a follow-up question on the shochet.
Yeah.
Or anybody in the work industry.
Yeah, and I haven't forgotten about your question. I want to go back to address it directly.
Yeah, it's is it possible that you could be a shochet and do it every day and also be sensitive to animals, or is it a contradiction?
I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure. That's the the Sefer Chinuch is big on saying that if you take a tzaddik and you make him do wicked actions, then he'll eventually become a rasha, and so I don't know how much this is possible. Example, like with surgeons, let's say, or like doctors, who are, let's say, doctors who are constantly around death and suffering. It's got to change you, like you could still be sensitive and stuff like that, but I think there's certain things that are just going to change you against your will. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, just about that. My sister-in-law was when she was pregnant and going through, I think there's a lot of different parts of pregnancy that are very painful. There were some doctors that were like, yeah, it's normal, when she was like, this thing is very painful and I'm concerned. They're just like, yeah, it's normal, and
Right.
bad
bedside manner,
which is like,
yeah. But going back to your other question, I mean, to what extent is it lechatchila or bedieved? Does my hierarchy answer that question or not?
I feel like the first thing you said answers it kind of about when you were going with the Mishnah, where
then this is necessary evil, lechatchila necessary evil.
I'd say I guess conceptually it's a bedieved, but practically it's the best strategy, and and the reason why they're saying it's yafa and ahavas malacha is that attempting to kind of skirt around it is a worse strategy than accepting that that's necessary.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we definitely have to learn those Mishnayos in depth in order to actually be convinced that we know what Chazal meant by it. But I think this is, for a Q&A, I think this is what I would answer. Yeah.
Another unrelated question.
Sure.
Okay. So coming up on wedding season, and so I have a whole bunch of weddings coming up.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to relate to all the weddings as being the simachot that they are individually, and not just oh, I have a party tonight, I have a party tomorrow night, and I have another party.
Yeah.
I don't want to be relating to them as parties. I want to relate to them as what I should be relating to.
How many more weddings are coming up?
What?
How many more weddings are coming up?
Well, I don't want a number. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Because then I wouldn't relate to it just a whole bunch of parties coming up.
I have two more coming up. It's a number.
Anyway.
Okay, so do you have suggestions, thoughts, anything of how I can, or ideas that I can think about to relate to each of these as their own individual, being happy for this friend, being happy for that friend, and seeing what the objective within all these weddings are.
Yeah.
And then a bonus alongside that actually something that would make me happy at every one of those weddings instead of just okay, I'm sick of partying, I'm done.
It's a lot.
Yeah, so just if there are any thoughts or things I can then to keep each of these being their own individual.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, my wedding experience was greatly enhanced this, earlier this year, going through the Shavah Brachos and the ideas there. And you were here for that year, I think, that we did. Yeah. So review.
On wedding.
Okay, good. Yeah. So I would, I think it's my best wedding experiences have come from reviewing those ideas and then seeing how this couple is going, kind of analogous to the first question about the universal goals, and then how these particular human beings are going to contribute or fulfill those goals. I always find that that's the perfect sweet spot for the joy of the objective joy of Od Yishama Bar Yehuda, V'chutzos Yerushalayim, Kosazon, et cetera, and this couple and my attachment to them. It's you get all the levels of simcha. And then in terms of the other question was the wearing yourself out from it's very hard when the weddings are in close proximity.
Back to back next week.
Yeah.
Monday and Tuesday.
Yeah. And the Thursday also.
Oh boy.
And the following Sunday.
Oh my goodness.
Who's it Thursday and Sunday?
Okay, so what are he clearly if he wanted to talk about whose wedding it was, he would say so. Okay, and the fact that he's deliberately avoiding answering your question means he doesn't want to say.
I didn't realize that you didn't want to talk about it.
Because maybe not all people are invited to all weddings, and talking about this in public format is gonna,
Or it could just be family.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway. Yeah. I mean, I think there is a mode you can get into where you just have to roll up the old sleeves and just throw yourself into the celebratory thing, and just it's going to deplete you a lot, and you get to the point obviously where you're physically you need to recharge, then like, there's not much you can do about that.
I think my concern is, and you know me, that it's less the inability to get there into dancing as much as I want to be enjoying it while I'm there.
Right.
For the enjoyment, and definitely is a type of enjoyment that you go into it too much and you start getting sick of that enjoyment.
Yeah, I still
want to
think,
enjoy
right.
it.
I still think using the old trick of like that this is the only time that you're going to have this, and I'm going to contrast that with I don't know if I mentioned this before, but there are times when, let's say, like I'm eating a really, really good meal, and like let's say like it's a really, really good steak or whatever, and like I'm just eating more. I find that telling myself this is not the last time you're going to eat steak somehow changes the way I relate to the activity and makes me realize that part of the like throwing myself headfirst into the pleasure is from this thing of like this fear of like losing out on something eternal, So for the steak, then it's true. I'm gonna have other steaks, But for this celebration, this is the last time they're gonna be. Definitively, it's gonna be the only time you're gonna be having this wedding, And so like I do think that is warranted. That this is a unique opportunity, and like appreciating that fact will help you to be present in it. To the extent that you're physically capable, Yeah.
So I thought it was asking like a different question.
Yeah.
Not like in terms of exhaustion, but like in terms of like like each wedding, it's like different people.
Yeah.
Different relationships.
Yeah.
So how do you maintain that same objective?
Yeah. So
that's what I thought.
Right. For that, I think the first strategy is good, and also the other thing is like allowing yourself to. There is a thing of savoring the emotional feelings that you're having, like a conscious act of like, let's say you feel this like rush of affection for your friends who are getting married or whatever. Like there is a conscious move of like sitting in that feeling, like, and pausing and just like experiencing that. So like trying to create spaces and moments for you to do that, whether scheduled ahead of time, like, let's say like, like for me, let's say like if I'm doing one of the kibbudim in the wedding or whatever, like thinking about that right before I go up there, then that's a good thing. Or like sometimes it'll seize me in the middle of the dancing, and I'll just sit to the side and just like smile, so that's I think that's good. Yeah. Okay. Next. Going, Sean?
Still thinking.
Okay.
Not all really.
Sure.
Okay. So how do you navigate? Okay, when you're looking to teach people different midah,
Yeah.
How do you navigate verbally saying over like the way that this midah should be thought about, should be expressed, and actually just physically doing it and have people learning through seeing you?
Okay. Yeah.
And is that different for different people in different circumstances and then different situations also?
Okay, so teaching Middos through Talmud Torah versus modeling. I'm gonna change this later.
Sure.
Yeah. So when you say teaching people, I think a lot of this depends on who you're talking about, and whether it's like a peer versus whether you're already in a teaching position, like a parent or a teacher.
Okay.
So I think as a parent or a teacher, then there certainly can't be an inconsistency between what you're teaching, what you're doing, right? That's like the baseline. But I think what you can do is you can, narrate or provide commentary on the real world examples in order to like bridge. There goes Isaac. In order to bridge the gap, like talking about, let's say like people don't always pick up on middos that are modeled, right? Yeah. So using like, let's say like whether it's bringing it up as an example, like at a later time, or like discussing it afterwards, or if it's a peer, you can do that through discussion of like describing like a situation you were in and like how you handled it, and then like, talking it out and getting feedback on it, like kind of like a kibutero type, note, right? And so I think I guess what I'm saying is like you need to try to bridge the gap both ways. If you're just teaching it, you need to also create opportunities where you're demonstrating it. And if you're demonstrating it, you need to create opportunities where you can talk about it. and like examine it and teach it, and I think the other thing also is if the person, in terms of the modeling it, it's going to affect people more if they're a beneficiary of it. Like if I do let's say like I do an act of I'll give you an example. Okay, I'll give you an example, right? So there is someone I know who has a close family member who was the victim of identity theft. Okay, this is the first person I've ever met who's like actually had like identity theft, and it's a nightmare. Like apparently, like it's I've seen a costume of, so this friend told me about it, and then the next week I was shopping at Gourmet Glot, and I put my wallet in my pocket, and I guess it like when I walked out, it fell out in the store, and I was going to my car, and then I got a call from Gourmet Glot that said that they found my wallet, and I was like relieved that so I went and got it, and I was feeling this relief, and then I thought to myself like, oh, like this was like a very, very, very tame thing of like, if I lost my credit cards, the worst thing that could happen is like, okay, I cancel my credit cards, I got another copy of the driver's license. And then I was thinking like, wow, like if someone actually stole my identity and like was getting credit cards in my name, and like the bank might like foreclose my house, like that's a nightmare. So I texted my friend and I said like, hey, like this happened to me, and like I had experienced this relief, but then I also said like on some small level, I can only imagine like what you're going through, and like I'm sorry that you're going through that, So then he came up to me twice over the next couple of weeks and said, it really meant a lot that just to hear that you were like thinking of me in that way, So like, I guess what I'm saying is, let's say I'm telling you guys about this, right? You're getting the impact from hearing about it in a Talmud Torah setting, but for the person who was the recipient of this, that's going to stick with them for a long time. So if you can orchestrate situations where you are practicing your good middos on your friends or on the people who you want to teach them to, either artificially or naturally, and then first of all, the impact itself is going to be much greater. And then also like just talking about it with the person, again, I'm not talking about this, and you can't like immediately start deconstructing it, because then that kind of like interferes with the actual thing, So yeah, so if they're a beneficiary, then it's going to mean much more to them, stick with them much more.
Okay, and then also then within that, then it sounds like probably gauge a situation or not necessarily that situation in the moment, but when it is best, then say something of like, hey, just like walking you through what I did over here, I thought that you would like just to show you the midot that I was trying to exercise here, and this is
and again that has to be done tactfully in a way that is not going to undermine the feelings of affection and kindness and stuff, but yeah, like you can definitely do that. I think like a year is a good cutoff point, or like a half a year, in terms of like if you happen to be like talking about middos and like you bring up an example that involved the two of you from before, I think those feelings are safely like locked away in the heart, in a good way. You're not gonna like interfere with them. Yeah.
What was the question? Sorry.
What was the original question?
Yeah.
The original question was, how do you there's like teaching about middos, and then there's modeling middos, and how do you like navigate the balance between the two? Yeah.
Yeah. So I would ask, because like this is practically the end for me and Yeshiva this year.
Yeah.
So then going into next year.
Yeah.
How would you suggest taking the fresh start and using it as a way to improve like the overall culture and learning within the yeshiva?
A good Sean question.
Yeah, I was hoping for a good Sean question to go off on at the end. So first thing I think you did something like this. I wasn't there for it, but you did something like this at the end of the year, which is making notes while everything is still fresh.
Sure.
Because it's so easy to like get to the new year and look back and like forget about all the problems you had, forget about all the struggles you had, forget about, it's like making notes while it's fresh, critical, and then I think, doing also what you did at the beginning of this year, which is reviewing those notes and then like consciously strategizing about how can we plan this year to avoid those pitfalls. on a personal level, on an environmental level.
Mhm.
But then the other thing also is, I think a third step to do at the end of this year is to look back on what worked and what didn't work, in terms of what strategies did you implement that for, again, personally and globally, like worked and didn't work, and like why didn't it work, and then a fourth thing is this is something that is a good business strategy. I read about this from Tim Ferriss. I don't know who came up with the concept of the phrase like post-mortem, when like someone dies and like you examine the body and see like how they died. So doing a pre-mortem. Okay, pre-mortem for a business means, let's say your business is thriving right now.
Yeah.
Asking yourself, if our business dies, what is that death going to look like? How is that death going to come about? So sitting at the beginning of the year, this is kind of like a memento mori on an institutional level of like saying, if this year goes off the rails, how is that going to happen? Is it going to be that I'm too busy in school? Is it going to be that like there's not enough togetherness and cohesion in the system? Is it going to be that people are not caring enough about each other? And like being aware, premeditating malorum, that's what I meant to say, is like thinking about all the bad stuff that can happen, and then like coming up with preemptive strategies to deal with that, and not just preemptive strategies, but like maybe like canary in the coal mine. I don't know what you call that type of thing. Like setting up the canaries to be if I find, let's say I tell myself I'm going to devote this amount of time to like B'kius, or like I'm going to be devoted to my chavrusas in this amount, and like if I find that like I'm missing more chavrusas than I'm making, that's a canary, or let's say like if I find that that like we made grand plans to like have like a social event with like the guys and stuff like that, and if like we get to Sukkot and that hasn't, we get to like Hanukkah and that hasn't happened yet, then, so like, and I think putting them down on paper, first of all, the process of putting them down on paper is going to ensure a greater like formulation of them. And then being able to pull up the paper is going to like lead to greater accountability, And I also think that the more people you can go over it with, on both the individual level and on the group level, is the better it's going to be for the more you're going to ensure the success. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. It's important.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, hold on a second. One more thing also is, I feel like with accountability, this is the hardest one, I think, is that, in order for the group to work, people need to be invested in it. But there also are different levels of capability and responsibility. And like, I don't know how much this should be explicit or how much should just be taken into account by the person doing like this process. But like, you need to involve people in terms of their strengths and like not try to impose things that they're not capable of, like let's say like, with the, let's say like the kibbutz te'arot thing, that used to involve more people, right? That like I've asked certain people and they said like, yeah, it dragged on for too long, and like that didn't work for them, So like making those decisions about, and then like I think the more people could talk about the situation, the solutions that are being implemented, and like to what extent do you want to be involved? To what extent do you not want to be involved? How can we try to accommodate people? It's a lot of work, but it's worth it. Yeah.
All right, so okay, so I went out on a date this week, and and it was interesting because she told me that like she's like a Baal tshuva, and she's done things and whatever. And she said on the first date, I'm like, I appreciate you saying that. And I remember a few years ago, I was like very opposed, to like being with someone who like did those things, right? But then as time went on, I matured. And
sorry, I just blanked. Say what type of things again? I heard the Baal tshuva, but
if she's Baal tshuva and she's done things.
Okay, fine. All right, yeah.
Whatever.
Okay,
whatever,
right.
I didn't pry.
Right.
Not like I pried in.
Yeah.
There's wedding plans.
Yeah.
Anyway, so like so the challenge was for her was that I haven't done anything.
Yeah.
Like in my history, like I didn't do anything that I shouldn't have done, and I guess she felt that that it was almost like it was like a psychological concern for her, because not that I didn't do anything, but the fact that like that relation, like she's done something and I didn't, it creates like an imbalance. Right. So the question, it's a multifaceted question. One question is, how do you convey to someone that like you're like this is who you are right now, like what you've done before that's not relevant anymore because you did shoot, like it's like someone converted, you don't remind them of it, or it's like Shmuel and I, we married Rachel Pazona,
Shmuel?
No, Yeshua.
Yeah, right.
Sorry, Yeshua.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So like you see, like she's definitely done things.
Yeah, right.
So I guess the question is like, how do you convey that that idea?
Yeah.
The second question is there a bad midah in not pursuing someone who have done those things in the teshuvah?
Hold on a second. Too many negatives. Is there a bad midah? Meaning, if you don't pursue someone like that because of their past, is that a bad midah in you?
Yeah. Because I used to have there, and I realized, okay, this isn't important. And I'm wondering if there's like a having a
Right. Yeah.
And like, or it's just psychologically, you just can't control it.
Yeah.
And you just don't want to be with someone.
That's a fair question.
Never done it.
Yeah.
Like, what do
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Okay. So the first question, I think is, unfortunately, I think the answer is there's not much you can say to change a person's feelings about their guilt about what they've done in the past. I think the only two routes are, and I don't mean that these are like mutually exclusive routes, but like the more a person learns about teshuvah, the more they will realize that you're not defined. That's the whole idea of teshuvah, is that you're not defined by your past actions, and that in many cases, like, the whole idea of doing teshuvah and your avonos can become zchuyos, like that the transgressions that you did can be, if you do teshuvah, are utilized as like things that perfected you, and you almost, lechatchila, you still shouldn't have done them, but like you embrace them and love them, because they are a part of what made you who you are. So like, but that's a realization that someone needs to come to on their own the more they learn about teshuvah. And you see that, like that's the whole thing that the Rambam explains for why we have korbanos on Chatayim, and why we have the Vidu Yom Kippurim, and why we have Vidu in general, that all of these things are like one of my theories of kapara, based on an idea from Rav Pesach before, is like, the question is, after you've done teshuvah, why do you need kapara? Like, what is there left? You've changed yourself. So the Rambam explains that when you lean on, there still is a part of you that feels tainted by your sins. And when you lean on the animal at the end of your teshuvah process, and you say, Ana Hashem chatasi v'isi pshati lefnecha v'asisi kach v'kach v'zo kaparasi, and then shecht, kabbalah, holacha, zrika, boom, then you get kapara and you're done. There's a psychological closure that comes, but God had to legislate that. Like, it needs to come from outside. And for us, the only thing we have for that is Yom Kippurim, like feeling the cleansing nature of Yom Kippurim. But it needs the basis of like understanding teshuvah and understanding these ideas. That's one side. The other side, you really can't do anything about, which is the person's psyche. Like some of it is going to be a matter of just maturation. Some of it is going to be, they need therapy. Some of it is, some of it is going to be like just coming to terms with certain things in themselves. And like, I don't think there's anything you can do to force that. The most you can do as a supportive member of the relationship is voicing and modeling like the true ideas, but you're not going to be able to like change the person.
She was pretty, she just said that like it was, like she's been having a hard time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, look, why?
Right.
So I was, trying to being supportive of that.
Yeah.
And just.
That's good. Yeah, right.
But
and look, for some people, it's going to need to be a thing of like I don't care about your past, and for some people, it's going to need to be a positive, like whatever, like a more I don't know what you want to call it. Yeah.
With that also, Rebbe's essay on sin and guilt, and I think one thing also definitely helps with the teshuvah process is recognizing that we don't have guilt in Judaism, like we have sin, but not like the Christian, like that pain.
Yeah,
guilt.
right.
I think that definitely then once you remove yourself or separate from that guilt, that will enable you to then actually move toward being accepting of this thing. Whereas if there's like something intrinsically wrong with it and intrinsically wrong with me, then it's gonna make it much harder to be willing to work with that.
That's true. I was thinking about that. I was lumping that into the category of learning about teshuvah, but you're right. It's like learning about what it means to be human and like what the psyche is, what place emotions have, guilt, shame, all those things is also another like thing that needs to be, that's like an intellectual journey that they need to go on and like assimilate those ideas into themselves.
Yeah.
Regarding the other question, of is an imperfection. I mean, it is, but I don't know how much that can be forced either. Like I know people, for example, and this, I'm saying this, and this is like bad, right? I know people who in their early 20s didn't want to date anyone who had been divorced because of this like psychological hang up of like, this was another man's wife, and then as they get into their late 20s, they're like, either they change or they're like, I need to expand the dating pool, and then you realize like, it's just like part of it is just a realization, like this is just a dumb emotion. And like, I can get over that. So it is
an emotional or psychological?
I don't know what the difference is. No, I don't know what the difference is. I mean, don't emotions come from the psyche? Isn't the psyche emotions? I don't know what the difference is. But so some of these things I think change over time. And then something, see, that's the difficulty, right? Is like, this gets back to that old machlokus with Rabbi Moskowitz with me, is that, we both agree that there are, that the more you have clear knowledge, the more your emotions will change on their own. And we also both agree that there are times when you should put yourself into situations and push your own like comfort zone and boundaries, and that will accelerate the change. But then the question is where to draw the line. And so let's say for here, like for some people, all it's going to need is breaking through the barrier of the first couple of dates. And then if you end up clicking with a person, it's going to be no problem. Other people, it's going to be like a hang up that like they're always going to be like insecure. Let's say, especially when it gets in the realm of the sexual, like there are going to be certain men who are always going to, if they're married to someone who was married to another man, they're always going to be insecure about measuring up to that other guy, and that's going to be a thing that could have a long-term effect on the relationship. Maybe that could be solvable with like couples therapy. Maybe that, I don't know.
Yeah. So for me, like learning more. About, within Synopsis stories and like learning the ideas of teshuvah, like that's what
right,
like changed for me. Like, okay, fine, if they did teshuvah, and,
right.
You also want to ask like, why did they do? Was that rebellious? Was that this? Like,
why did you do the sin? You mean?
Yeah,
right.
Like, was it out of just okay, whatever? Or was it?
Look, here's another thing also, and this is answering your first question as well, which is Chazal speak so much about the praise of Baal Teshuvah. That tzaddikim gurim. Like that in a certain sense, Baal Teshuvah is on a higher level than a tzaddik. Like, see all those Ramos at the end of Hilchos Teshuvah Perek Shvi'i, and like again, telling this person that might not help, but like making it clear that is your stance, your genuine stance is definitely, it can't hurt, and it can only help. Yeah. Okay, we have time for one more quick question if there is one. Last question of the year. Well, not of the year, but last question in the Friday Q&A of the year.
I don't know if it's going to be a quick
Sure,
one.
yeah.
I'll just ask it. We talked a lot about perfection here.
Yeah.
What does the perfected person actually look like? Like, what does that mean? What characteristics does that person have? How do they act?
Rebbe.
That is a good question.
Have we seen that?
I don't know what the
Right.
one.
Well, I mean, for starters, there's a shir on Eshes Chayil, which talks about like the features in a Mishlei Tzaddik, but is there like a unified picture of such a person? Hard to say. Part of what's hard to say about it also is the more you perfect yourself, the more your own unique qualities will shine forth. Like, in other words, like this, when you're talking about perfection in cookies, okay? Like, let's say you're trying to like perfect a recipe. So the perfect cookie, as you get closer and closer to perfection, the cookies will look more and more the same.
Tate's.
What?
Tate's cookies.
I know what those are now. But in human perfection, the more perfected you are, the more unique you will be. Like the more you're going to stand out. Like a perfected Rav Soloveitchik is a unique personality. A perfected Rabbi Chait is a unique personality. A perfected Ram is, so there will be certain common features that like Eshes Chayil talks about, but you're really going to be like separating from the species and distinguishing yourself. That's like the Rav on. Let's end the Q&A by reading one of my favorite excerpts from the Rav. Where do I put it? I'll share the screen in a second, Isaac.
then after Q&A.
Also, sorry, what does it mean to perfect yourself? Like, what
That is a longer share. Yeah,
Okay.
longer answer. Yeah. So let me just read this because this is, I think, would be a good fitting thing to yes, this is 3 paragraphs here, 4 paragraphs. So this is in Halakha Man. The gist of Maimonides' view is that man occupies a unique position in the kingdom of existence and differs in his ontological nature, ontological means relating to existence, from all other creatures. With reference to all other creatures, only the universal, not the particular, has a true continuous existence. With respect to man, however, it is an everlasting principle that his individual existence also attains the heights of true eternal being. Indeed, the primary mode of man's existence is the particular existence of the individual, who is both liable and responsible for his acts. Therefore, it is the individual who is worthy of divine providence and eternal life. He's explaining why, according to the Rambam, Hashgacha Pratis is in proportion to your closeness to God, and it's not like everyone gets Hashgacha Pratis equally. Man, in one respect, is a mere random example of the biological species. Species man, an image of the universal, a shadow of true existence. In another aspect, he is a man of God, possessor of an individual existence. What? In another respect, yeah. If I said it wrong, sorry. The difference between a man who is a mere random example of the biological species and a man of God is that the former, now here's his description. Okay, this is answering your question. The former, species man, is characterized by a passivity, the latter by activity and creation. The man who belongs solely to the realm of the universal is passive to an extreme. He creates nothing. The man who has a particular existence of his own is not merely a passive receptive creature, but acts and creates. Action and creation are the true distinguishing marks of authentic existence. However, this ontological privilege, which is the peculiar possession of the man who has a particular existence of his own, a privilege that distinguishes him from all other creatures and endows him with individual immortality, is dependent upon man himself. The choice is his. He may, like the individual of all other species, exist in the realm of the images and the shadows, or he may exist as an individual who is not part of the universal and who proves worthy of a fixed, established existence in the world of the forms and intellect separate from matter. Species man, or man of God, is the alternative which the Almighty placed before man, meaning the choice. If he proves worthy, then he becomes a man of God in all the splendor of his individual existence, that cleaves to absolute infinity and glorious divine overflow. If he proves unworthy, then he ends up as one more random example of the biological species, a turbid and blurred image of the universal existence. Okay, now this is my favorite paragraph. Man at times exists solely by virtue of the species, by virtue of the fact that he was born a member of that species and its general form is engraved upon him. He's just a cookie. He exists solely on account of his participation in the idea of the universal. He's just a member of the species, man, an image of the universal. He is just one more example of the species image in its ongoing morphological process. He himself, however, has never done anything that could serve to legitimate his existence as an individual. This relates to your first question of the day also. His soul, his spirit, his entire being are all grounded in the realm of the universal. His roots lie deep in the soil of faceless mediocrity. His growth takes place solely within the public domain. He has no stature of his own, no original individual personal profile. He has never created anything, never brought into being anything new, never accomplished anything. He is receptive, passive, a spiritual parasite. He is wholly under the influence of other people and their views. Never has he sought to render an accounting either of himself or of the world. Never has he examined himself, his relationship to God or a fellow man. He lives unnoticed and dies unmourned. Like a fleeting cloud, a shadow, he passes through life and he is gone. He bequeaths nothing to future generations, but dies without leaving a trace of his having lived. Empty-handed he goes to the grave, bereft of mitzvah performances, good deeds, and meritorious acts. For while living, he lacked any sense of historical responsibility and was totally wanting in any ethical passion. He was born involuntarily, and it is for this reason and this reason alone that he involuntarily lives out his life, a life which paradoxically he has chosen until he dies involuntarily. This is man as the random example of the biological species. But there is another man, one who does not require the assistance of others, who does not need the support of the species to legitimate his existence. Such a man is no longer a prisoner of time, but is his own master. He exists not by virtue of the species, but solely on account of his own individual worth. His life is replete with creation and renewal, cognition and profound understanding. He lives not on account of his having been born, but for the sake of life itself, and so that he may merit thereby life in the world to come. He recognizes the destiny that is his obligation and task in life. He understands full well the dualism running through his being and that choice which has been entrusted to him. He knows that there are two paths before him, and that whichever he shall choose, there must he go. He is not passive but active. His personality is not characterized by receptivity, but by spontaneity. He does not simply abandon himself to the rule of the species, but blazes his own individual trail. Moreover, he as an individual influences the many. His whole existence, like some enchanted stream, rushes ever onward to distant magical regions. He is dynamic, not static, does not remain at rest, but moves forward in an ever-ascending climb. For indeed, it is the living God for whom he pines and longs. This is the man of God. The fundamental of providence is here transformed into a concrete commandment, an obligation incumbent upon man. Man is obligated to broaden the scope and strengthen the intensity of the individual providence that watches over him. Everything is dependent on him. It is all in his hands. When a person creates himself, ceases to be a mere species man, he ceases to be a mere species man and becomes a man of God, then he has fulfilled that commandment which is implicit in the principle of providence.
The roast said it all.
Yeah. Yep. So that is, may we all aspire to do that this summer and throughout our remaining years of learning. Yeah.
Okay, so I have a question.
Okay. All right. Postscript. Okay, but we're past our time,
Yeah,
so if you have to go,
yeah,
go. Yeah.
so, yeah, you can go. So my question is, with your reflection, this is Sean's question. With your reflection,
Yeah.
Of this year,
Yeah.
what do you think that we can implement as a group for next year?
I will have to think about that, and I wouldn't record it anyway. All right. Thanks for coming.